The Senate of Threx Prime shimmered beneath its artificial sky, a dome of gold light suspended over marble so polished it reflected the stars. Hollow banners of the Empire's victories rippled above the assembled species, each a monument to millennia of conquest. Commander Rail Corps walked alone through that corridor of illusions, his talons echoing against the floor like the tolling of a distant bell. He had not stood in this chamber for decades. His feathers, once obsidian black, had dulled to gray at the edges. The scars across his jawline glowed faintly under the luminescent air, a map of every war the Empire swore it had won. He paused before the Senate dais where hundreds of counselors floated on gravity thrones. The High Strategos, Velra Tor, sat highest, framed by a silver halo that marked her command authority. "Commander Rail Corps," she announced, voice clipped and resonant. "You requested this audience to discuss humans?" Her emphasis carried the contempt of 1,000 generations. Rail inclined his head. "Yes, Strategos. I speak not of conjecture but of what I have witnessed." A ripple of amusement coursed through the chamber. The senators leaned back, murmuring like vultures waiting for a carcass to stop twitching. Rail drew a breath steady but heavy. 50 cycles ago, during the rebellion on Kern 7, we encountered them. Bipedal, carbon-based, unsophisticated at first glance. But they do not break as others do. I saw them crawl through fire with their comrades' bodies on their backs. They fought after losing limbs, after losing hope. They don't surrender, they adapt. Velra's smile was soft and poisonous. "You're describing desperation, not strength." "Desperation is their strength," Rail said. "You can destroy their cities, erase their names, but not their will. When we bombarded their trenches, they dug new ones with their hands. When their weapons failed, they used our own against us." A senator hissed. "Primitive mimicry, nothing more." Rail's gaze swept across them, voice tightening. "You misunderstand. They learn mid-battle. Each fallen soldier becomes a lesson, each defeat an instruction. They do not evolve by generations, they evolve by minutes." Velra folded her talons across her chest. "And yet they lost. Kern 7 remains Imperial soil." "Barely," Rail said. "We buried the planet in glass, but it cost us half a fleet. They fought until none remained to surrender." He stepped closer to the dais, his voice carrying a weight that silenced even mockery. "You cannot win a war against something that welcomes extinction as long as it takes you with it." Velra's expression hardened. "Enough of this defeatist mythology. You speak as if these creatures are gods." "No," he said quietly. "They are mortals who remember they are mortal. That makes them gods compared to us." The chamber erupted in laughter. Some senators clapped their claws in mock applause. Others whispered that Rail had finally gone mad. Velra leaned forward, her eyes narrowing like slits of cold iron. "The Empire does not fear. You will remember your place, Commander." Rail's wings flexed once, not in defiance but in weariness. "Fear keeps a civilization alive, Strategos. Lose it, and you start dying from the inside." Her voice cut like plasma. "You are dismissed." He saluted sharply, then turned on his heel. The laughter followed him down the hall until the sound faded into the sterile hum of the Imperial corridors. Outside the Senate chamber, a young officer waited. Lieutenant Lyran Val, eyes bright, uniform too crisp to have seen true war. She straightened as he approached. "Commander Corps, sir, I believe your report was unjustly dismissed." He studied her face. She reminded him of himself before the nightmares. "Belief won't matter when the fleets depart," he said. "They'll go to Kern 7 again. They always return to the same graves, expecting different ghosts." Lyran hesitated. "You think the humans will fight again?" "They never stopped," he murmured. "They're patient. They wait until arrogance writes the next invitation." A beeping pulse came from the hollow slate at his belt. Classified alert. Unidentified Terran vessels detected in the Orion Spur, possible alliance with local insurgents. Imperial response underway. Rail exhaled slowly. "There it is." Lyran frowned. "They won't take your warning seriously. They never do." He handed her his data chip. If I don't return, record this. Someone must remember the truth when the Empire forgets. He left her standing in the corridor, staring at the sealed ship glowing in her palm. Back in his quarters, Rael deactivated the lights. The city beyond the window burned with the cold luminescence of progress. Towers rising into mist, endless fleets crawling across the void like metallic insects. He remembered the faces of the humans he had fought, eyes ringed with soot, teeth clenched not in hate but in defiance. They had stared down plasma cannons with expressions that said, "You can kill us, but you can't stop us." He activated his recorder and began to dictate. Personal log, Railcorps. The Senate has forgotten fear. They mistake cruelty for control. I warned them once, I will not beg them twice. If history repeats itself, let this record stand. The humans will not seek war, but if war finds them, the stars will remember what we forgot. He ended the recording, talons tightening against the console's edge. Somewhere in the distance, the drums of the fleet assembly echoed through the city. Far away, under a real sky thick with smoke and rain, human soldiers were digging trenches again. On Kern 7, Commander Nguyen crouched beneath a rusted transport hull, his uniform soaked in mud and blood. Around him, men and women worked silently, planting crude field emitters and booby traps in the rubble. The Empire had called them rebels. They called themselves survivors. Think they'll come? A corporal asked, wiping sweat from her brow. Nguyen's voice was low but steady. They'll come. They always come when they think we're finished. And when they do? He looked up through the broken clouds at the orbiting shadows already glimmering against the night. Then we teach them again why fear is a human invention. The wind howled through the ruins like the ghosts of those who'd already learned. Back on Threx Prime, Rael stood on a balcony overlooking the launching docks. One by one, the dreadnoughts ignited their drives, crimson light flooding the night. His feathers ruffled in the shockwave. He felt the vibration through his bones, the heartbeat of a dying empire marching proudly toward its own funeral. Lyran approached, breathless. They've named the campaign already, Operation Cinderfall. Rael almost laughed. They always choose poetic names for their own disasters. Will you go with them? She asked. I must, he said. They call it duty. I call it witness. She looked away, voice small. And if you're right? Then the Empire will finally understand what it means to meet a species that doesn't fear gods. As the fleet tore a hole in the sky, Rael whispered to no one. You cannot conquer what refuses to die. The stars above shimmered coldly, indifferent. Somewhere beyond them, humanity waited, not as conquerors, but as the next lesson. The void above Kern 7 shimmered like oil on water. Thousands of Imperial vessels hung in formation, their hulls glinting with the cold arrogance of conquest. The flagship Veilthran eclipsed the planet, a dagger-shaped colossus blotting out the sun. Inside its command bridge, Commander Railcorps stood beside High Strategos Velra Tor as she observed the world below, a scarred sphere of ash and ruin. Begin atmospheric descent, she ordered. Her tone was serene, almost bored. A chorus of confirmations echoed through the bridge. Dozens of displays flared to life, showing burning skies as drop pods rained through the clouds. Rael's throat tightened. Strategos, the terrain favors ambush. Kern 7 is riddled with underground tunnels. We should deploy reconnaissance drones before committing legions. Velra didn't look up. This planet was sterilized once already. Whatever remains are stragglers clinging to myth. He studied the blue-white glow of the screens, the same hue as the eyes of human soldiers who had haunted his sleep for 50 years. Stragglers don't leave coordinated heat signatures across 3 continents, he said softly. She ignored him. Initiate ground assault. The bridge trembled as the Veilthran released its dropships. Trails of plasma streaked through the atmosphere like falling stars. Below, the planet woke. On the surface, Commander Nguyen crouched behind a shattered ridge, visor reflecting the incoming inferno. Positions! He barked. Marines slid into cover among the ruins. Improvised sensors pinged. The first wave was descending. Sergeant Vega adjusted the field transmitter. They're bringing full legions, sir. Nguyen's voice was calm. Good. They'll be easier to hit. Explosions tore open the horizon as Imperial walkers landed, their claws sinking into the cracked soil. The soldiers of Threx advanced in perfect geometric lines, their armor gleaming like mirrors. Then the ground erupted. Buried plasma mines detonated in sequence, vaporizing the first ranks. From the rubble, humans emerged, mud-caked, ragged, their armor mismatched from scavenged alien tech. They didn't shout. They simply fired. The alien lines faltered. Rael watched from orbit, transfixed. They were waiting. Velra's eyes narrowed. Then we flushed them out. Strategos, this isn't a conventional enemy. You can't outmaneuver creatures who expect death. She turned sharply. Your pessimism is becoming tedious, Commander. Perhaps you've gone soft from retirement. Rael bit back the retort. You'll see soon enough. Down below, the battle transformed into chaos. Human soldiers moved in pairs, darting between shadows. Their rifles spat bursts of plasma scavenged from captured Threx tech, tuned by instinct more than science. Nguyen's platoon outflanked a column of enemy armor, planting demolition charges beneath their tracks. When the detonations rolled across the ridge, the air filled with metal screams and firelight. Target their command relays! Nguyen shouted over the comms. Cut their head, and the body stumbles. Sergeant Vega laughed between bursts of gunfire. They still think we're savages. Let them, Nguyen said. That's our camouflage. On the bridge, Velra slammed her claw against the console. Why are our communications flickering? Localized interference, an officer replied. Unknown source. Possibly electromagnetic pulses. Rael leaned forward. EMP. They've weaponized your own power systems against you. They study faster than we react. Velra's jaw tightened. Deploy the orbital division. I want the capital cratered. Ma'am, Rael said sharply. Your troops are still on the ground. If they're competent, they'll adapt. He stared at her. For the first time, he realized she wasn't simply arrogant, she was blind. Moments later, fire rained from orbit. Shockwaves rippled across the surface, flattening structures, vaporizing terrain. When the smoke cleared, the legions were gone. So were thousands of humans. Velra's voice was cold. Collateral inevitability. Rael turned toward her slowly. You just killed half your army. They died for the Empire. No, he said. They died for your pride. On the planet, Nguyen dragged himself from the rubble, ears ringing. The air shimmered with heat. Around him, the survivors regrouped, bloodied, burned, but alive. Casualties? He croaked. 80%. Vega coughed. But their lines are gone too. Nguyen surveyed the devastation. Then we hit what's left. He keyed his comlink to all frequencies. To any Threx survivors in the field, medical safe zone at coordinate 43, North Ridge. You're bleeding out there, we'll treat you. No tricks. Vega frowned. You're offering aid to them? Nguyen nodded. Let them see what mercy looks like. That'll scare them more than fire. Back aboard Veilthran, reports streamed in, thousands dead, fleets crippled by their own bombardment. Rael's chest constricted. Strategos, you must retreat. Humanity has the surface. You can't fight an enemy that turns your own tactics into weapons. Velra slammed her fist on the console. I will not retreat before primitives! Alarms wailed. Energy readings spiked across the ship's sensors. Sir! An ensign shouted. They've hacked our targeting grid. Orbital cannons are misfiring. Shut it down! Velra barked. It's too late. The deck erupted. 2 nearby cruisers detonated, the shockwave rippling through the fleet. Rael was thrown to the floor. Smoke filled his lungs as he staggered upright, staring at the carnage. The humans had used their captured frequencies to turn the Empire's precision into suicide. Evacuate, he rasped. Before it's over. Velra glared at him, eyes wild. Coward! No, he said quietly. Survivor. He reached for her arm, but she wrenched free. Get off my bridge! Rael didn't argue. He staggered toward the emergency bay as explosions echoed overhead. Through the viewport, he saw the once majestic fleet twisting apart in orbit, ships colliding, fire blooming like flowers in space. He launched his pod. The planet filled the window, burning, fractured, alive. As he fell through the atmosphere, his comm picked up a faint broadcast, a human voice, calm and steady amid the static. "This is Commander Gwyn of the United Terran Forces. We didn't start this war. But we'll finish it if we must." The pod shuddered as it hit ground. When the hatch opened, smoke rolled in, tinged with ozone and ash. Rael crawled out, expecting death. Instead, he found a field hospital under a tattered Terran flag. Humans moved among the wounded, alien and human alike, bandaging, lifting, saving. A medic knelt beside him. Her face was smudged with soot, her hands gentle. "Easy," she said. "You're lucky. Most of your people didn't make it." He stared at her, stunned. "You're helping us?" She gave a tired smile. "We're soldiers, not monsters." Rael's throat closed. Everything he tried to explain to his superiors stood here in flesh and blood, a species that fought like demons but healed like saints. Outside, the storm subsided. The sky glowed faintly, littered with wreckage that drifted like constellations. Somewhere within it, the remains of the Veil Thran burned silently. Gwyn appeared beside the medic, looking down at Rael. His expression was unreadable. "You were one of theirs," Gwyn said. "I was," Rael whispered. "Now, I'm not sure what that means." Gwyn crouched beside him. "Then maybe you'll understand something they never could, why we fight." Rael met his gaze. "Not for conquest." "No," Gwyn said softly. "For each other." The words struck deeper than any blade. Rael looked to the smoke-choked horizon. The Empire's pride lay buried beneath it, and for the first time in his long life, he felt a strange kind of peace, born not from victory, but from truth. He turned his eyes skyward, toward the shattered armada, and whispered, "The lesson has begun." The Senate chamber of Threx Prime was silent for the first time in living memory. The banners of conquest that once shimmered in gold now hung dim, edges burned by shame. Hollow screens flickered with casualty reports from Kern 7, entire legions erased, fleets gone, a world rendered into orbiting fragments. Commander Rael Kor stood before the assembly, no longer in uniform. The metal plates had been stripped from his chest. His wings hung low, feathers dulled by soot. Yet his eyes were steady, sharper than the polished marble beneath his feet. High Strategos Velrator stood opposite him, her once impeccable armor fractured down the center like a mirror split in two. The Senate speaker's voice broke the silence. "The Empire demands explanation for the failure at Kern 7. Velra's jaw clenched. "Sabotage. Human infiltration compromised our systems. They weaponized chaos, nothing more." Rael's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "You gave them chaos to use. You treated an enemy as a nuisance and met annihilation instead." Velra turned toward him, her tone venomous. "You speak as if you admire them." "I respect them," Rael said. "That's the difference between wisdom and blindness." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The senators shifted uneasily, their arrogance beginning to fracture under the weight of truth. Rael stepped forward, his voice gaining strength. "On Kern 7, they fought in the ruins we made for them. We thought fire would break them, but it only tempered them. They do not fight for territory or glory. They fight because survival is sacred to them, and because they fight for each other." Velra slammed her talon against the podium. "Enough of your heresy!" Rael faced the assembly. "You call it heresy because you fear what it means. If beings of flesh and bone, without fleets or empires, can bring the Threxian war machine to its knees, then what are we? Gods or fools who forgot what fear is?" The speaker's voice trembled. "Commander, you claim they acted with purpose? That this destruction was deliberate?" Rael nodded. "Yes. They could have wiped us out. They didn't. They saved the wounded. They offered aid. I saw it with my own eyes." Velra's snarl echoed through the chamber. Lies! Propaganda! Truth! Rael countered. They spared even me, an enemy commander. They call it mercy. We call it weakness. That is why they will outlive us. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of his words pressed against centuries of certainty. Finally, the speaker leaned back, voice subdued. High Strategos Velrator, the Senate finds you responsible for the loss of the Kern Expeditionary Fleet. You are hereby relieved of command and confined to the Citadel for life. Velra's scream of protest was drowned beneath the thunder of the gavel. Guards stepped forward, their armor reflecting the hollow grandeur of a fading empire. She struggled as they led her away, eyes blazing hatred at Rael. You've doomed us with your weakness, she hissed. You've given them power through fear. Rael met her gaze without flinching. No. I've given us a chance to understand power through humility. As the doors sealed behind her, the chamber felt smaller. The senators avoided his eyes. The empire that once ruled galaxies could not bear to look at its own reflection. Rael turned and walked out into the light. The city stretched before him, towers blackened by industry, skies veiled in perpetual haze. He had spent his life defending these monuments to dominance. Now they felt like tombstones. Weeks passed. The Senate buried the defeat under propaganda. Official broadcasts called Kern 7 an unfortunate tactical miscalculation. No one spoke the word defeat aloud. Yet fear hung in the air, not of the humans, but of what they represented. In the Imperial archives, Rael reviewed intercepted transmissions. New Terran fleets were expanding through the border sectors, not as conquerors, but as explorers, accompanied by aid vessels. They rebuilt worlds the Empire had once stripped bare. He watched a recording from a mining colony where Terran medics tended to alien workers. Children played beside humans without fear. That image pierced him deeper than any battle wound. A voice interrupted his thoughts. You've been watching them again, Lyran Val said softly from behind him. The young lieutenant looked older now, her uniform worn from recent patrols. They understand rebuilding better than we ever did, Rael replied. We conquer and leave ashes. They plant gardens in them. Lyran hesitated. Do you think they'll come here? He nodded slowly. Not with weapons. With words. That will terrify the Senate more than fleets. Months later, the prediction came true. The Terran diplomatic convoy entered Threxian space under escort. Their ships were smaller than Imperial dreadnoughts, utilitarian in design, but their presence carried weight that no armada could match. At the spaceport, Rael stood among the dignitaries as the human envoy stepped down the ramp. Commander Gwyn, the same man Rael had seen on Kern 7. His uniform was simple, his expression calm. Gwyn extended a hand. Commander Kor. Rael grasped it firmly, his clawed fingers curling around the human's. You survived. So did you, Gwyn said. Maybe that means we're both learning. The Senate delegation approached, stiff and formal. Gwyn's voice carried through the courtyard, translated into a dozen languages. We didn't come to occupy your worlds. We came to prevent more graves. The galaxy is wide enough for both of us, if you're willing to listen this time. Rael watched the senators' faces pale. For all their power, they had never been spoken to without fear. Nguyen's tone was respectful, but it held no submission. The Senate speaker forced a smile. The Empire will consider your proposal. Nguyen's gaze was steady. Consider carefully. Empires built on denial always fall. We've seen enough ruins to know the pattern. He turned and left with quiet dignity. No threats, no boasts, just truth. Later that night, Rael sat alone on a balcony overlooking the illuminated city. The stars reflected faintly in the metallic skyline, each one a scar of memory. He opened his recorder. Final log, Rael Kor, he began. The humans did not destroy us. They held a mirror instead. I see now that strength isn't in domination, but in endurance. They fight with fear and compassion intertwined, a paradox we never understood. I wonder if this is what evolution truly means, not better weapons, but better hearts. He paused, staring into the horizon where human ships glimmered against the void. They will not be our enemies much longer. Perhaps in time they'll be our teachers. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Lyran's voice came through. Commander, the humans have offered to assist with the reconstruction of Kern 7. They request your presence at the ceremony. Rael smiled faintly. Tell them I'll be there. He ended the call and looked upward. For the first time in centuries, the sky above Threx Prime seemed wider. The stars no longer felt like trophies, they felt alive again. Far beyond, Kern VI's orbit glittered with remnants of the fallen fleet. Among the wreckage, news stations pulsed with life as humans and aliens worked side by side, turning the graveyard into a cradle of renewal. Rael's final words, recorded weeks later, would echo through archives for generations. Empires fall not because they are defeated, but because they forget fear, compassion, and the value of struggle. Humanity remembers all three. That is why they endure. That is why they will lead. And in the silence of space, the ruined banners of the Threxian Empire drifted past the rising blue glow of Earth's ships, symbols of a new order built not on conquest, but on understanding,